World Rugby confirms there is no inherent danger and nothing wrong with and no reason to outlaw a 7-1 bench split in rugby. Presumably World Rugby tomorrow will come out with a story saying World Rugby confirm the moon is made out of rock, not cheese. It's one of those stories you didn't think needed to happen, but there have been some calls from some quarters saying that this is against the spirit of the game. And one of the criticisms, which I guess World Rugby have to listen to, is the calls that it is somehow dangerous to have more forwards, large men, powerful guys coming off the bench against fatigued bodies and the issues that could cause. And I will give credit to World Rugby on this. I think the administration of rugby generally leaves a lot to be desired in some cases, but I do think World Rugby, when it comes to certain issues, they actually do a very good job at just calmly going, okay, we've heard your problem, let's get some objective facts out there. And that's what they've done. The Springboks used this tactic of 7 forwards on the bench and 1 back before and during the 2023 Rugby World Cup. And France have used it most recently in the Six Nations Championship. And I suspect there will be more of this going on. Hybrid players, forwards who can also slot in the back line. I imagine this is something we're going to see more of as teams try and get a competitive advantage and match up and play to their strengths. But some people have come out and said that this is wrong and shouldn't happen. World Rugby, it's easy to give opinions, and I've given mine before on the channel, and if you're not sure what my opinions are, I'll just spell it out quickly. It's down to the coach to utilise whatever strengths that they have in whatever way they have to give themselves a competitive advantage. And everything is on the table. And it's down to the opposition coaches to react to that and try and do the same for their team. And I think this chess game of cause and effect and impact and knock-on impact, I think that's such a brilliant part of rugby, the fact there are so many different ways to win a game. And I will say, and what World Rugby have done is gone through the data and said based on the evidence we've seen, and the evidence, by the way, must be a very small sample size because not many teams have done this, but based on the data that they have, there is no elevated injury risk associated with it. So that knocks one of the issues on the head. But even if they had looked at the numbers and it said, yeah, there's a slightly elevated risk of injury. One, you don't know that that's a cause and effect. One thing is not necessarily causing the other because, like I say, the sample size is pretty small. But secondly, that wouldn't, for me, be a reason to get rid of an outlaw in any way, a 7-1 bench split. For the reasons I've said, well, that's down to the coaches. And I know safety is something that the people at the top of rugby have to be aware of, but it's not the be-all and end-all because rugby is, and always will be, and always should be, a difficult game. Now, Gregor Townsend is one of the people that spoke up about this. And you always have to wonder with this. Warren Gatland is another of the people that have been coaching in World Rugby and talking about this. And you have to wonder, are they mentioning it because they're thinking about the game more generally? Or are they thinking about it because they're thinking of their particular team who maybe aren't as strong in that particular area and it doesn't play to their particular strength? In terms of the actual replacement topic, and I think this is much more interesting than the 7-1 bench split, it's just replacements in general. I'm actually sympathetic to people who would like to change the number of replacements or just have a blank sheet of paper and think about some ideas. So initially, the number of replacements was increased to accommodate what had to be 3 specialist front row forwards. So whoever went off injured in any position in the front row, there was a specialist to come on, and that was due to safety concerns, injury worries surrounding the scrum and front row. And so that's what led us to where we are. I wouldn't actually be against fewer replacements, but dictating what position those replacements should be is nobody else's business. And I just want this conversation ended. That's down to the coaches. And I don't understand how, even if you wanted to, let's say, for example, World Rugby came out and said, oh, the data says that there's a big injury risk for teams that have a 7-1 bench split. What do you then do? We're going to outlaw a 7-1 bench split. You have to have 5 or maximum 6 forwards on your replacements bench and you can only have 2 backs. Well, what do you do with a player like Lavani Bottia, who can legitimately play to a very, very high level at centre and in the back row? What do you do when you have a 110 kilo, 6'6" centre who could quite easily slot in the pack, and maybe in their years growing up playing rugby, they did play there? Are you going to say they're not allowed to play in the forwards? I don't understand this. I mean, in some respects, other than when there's a scrum, positions are completely arbitrary. There's no rule that says you have to have the person wearing a number 4 on his back has to be this kind of player. That's just the way rugby goes. And rugby moves in trends and has fashions and things go in and out. And like wingers at the minute, we're experiencing a period, and I've done a video on this recently, where we're experiencing a period of smaller, diminutive, much faster wingers. And I think that's as a response to the 50-22 law, which means players drop into the backfield a little bit more, which means there's a bit more space on the edge. It's also because the laws around the breakdown mean that teams can more confidently keep possession for multi-phases, whereas, say, go back 10, 15 years, and the jacklers had so much more ability to get onto the ball, and it was a lot harder to keep the ball, that defences got on top. So this is the ecosystem of rugby. This is the evolutionary pressures that are put on the sport, and the coaches react and respond in the way that they select things. But dictating who you can put where and when and how, it should be off the table. It's not a conversation. I think there might be an argument, like I say, to have fewer replacements. Or what about you do it a little bit more like football does, where they have more replacements, but there's a limit on the number of tactical replacements you can put onto the field. So you could have, say at a Rugby World Cup, you could have your whole 31-man squad, or 33-man squad, whatever it is. You could have them all there on the bench, but the coach is only allowed to make, 6 changes. But they can be any position you want. You could put 6 backs on, if you like. You can put 6 forwards on, or maybe it's stick as the normal 8. But the coach can do with it whatever they want. But you can have your whole squad to pick from and put on the ones that you deem best for that particular match and that particular moment within a match. And maybe head injuries and blood replacements are separate from that. And that would mean that they would have to be run by independent doctors and stuff. And you get into other issues. And this is kind of one of the things I would say with all of these things. Someone has one issue with one thing. You try and solve one problem, you'll end up causing a whole load more problems. I think, as I think I've said before, leave, please, and this is why I quite like this from World Rugby. They're basically going, nothing to do with us. This is down to the coaches, and it's none of our business how coaches want to run their matchday squad, how coaches want to run their selection, tactically what they want to do on the field within the 80 minutes and within the confines of the law. And we're not going to get in and meddle with any more laws, which is something World Rugby have been guilty of doing a lot too much of in recent years, in my humble opinion. And when rugby is left alone, it finds an equilibrium and it works things out. And if someone gets a competitive advantage one way, then coaches will find the solution, the way around it, which will change the game again. And that is part of rugby that I absolutely love to see. And so I am I'm pleased at the outcome of World Rugby's research. But to go back to one of the points I made earlier, even if this story from World Rugby had been different, and let's say there had been an elevated risk of injury because of a 7-1 bench split, do I think that means we should change the game? I think a lot of people would be making that argument if that were the case. But no, I don't think it does. I don't think a risk of injury is a reason to eliminate something from the game of rugby. Because, and it's not popular or trendy to say it, but it's the truth, rugby is dangerous, always was, always will be, always should be, and the risk is the reward. The danger that's inherent in the game of rugby is the reason why it's a sport for anybody that wants to play it, but it's not a sport for everybody. And it's why I will have massive respect for anyone that steps onto a rugby field at whatever level that is, because it's not a sport for everyone. It's an amazing, dangerous sport that requires a certain type of person to play it. And that is why we love watching it and why the game is so compelling. So fair play, World Rugby. Maybe now the detractors will pipe down a little bit and focus instead on coming up with a solution about how to get around teams when they come up with a 7-1 bench split, or who knows, before long, are we going to see an 8-0? It's going to happen, isn't it? You know it's going to happen. Wonder if Rassi's already working on it. He's been equalled by the French, and maybe he's got to go one further. We'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.